travel. Tell the Chair about that, please, just very briefly.
Briefly, Chair, flights, travel, accommodation, and on occasion, quite frequently, they would also be booked by me on the Bosasa VIP account at Blake's Travel for Mti, his wife and his family, and I've provided the supporting documentation, all the flights, in a box to the Commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. Paragraph 30.3, you relate an incident concerning the records at Blake's Travel. How did this matter arise?
Chair, it arose when they started publishing information with regards to Blake's Travel. What actually happened at that stage was that we had to go and fetch all the computers from Blake's Travel, as well as the invoicing books, because they had copies, and we had to make sure that they were all destroyed. He obliged and handed everything to us.
Who gave the instruction?
Instruction came from Mr. Watson.
And to whom was the instruction given?
To both myself and Andries van Tonder.
And the instruction, once again?
Was to go to Blake's Travel, collect the computers, collect the documents, take them to Leipzig's Vlei, destroy them.
More or less, when was this?
This was just after the media report that you read just earlier.
2009?
Yes.
Right.
Blake's Travel was going to cooperate with this?
Yes.
And they did?
He did, because most of his business came from Bosasa. We spent about 1.7 to 2.2 million rand a month with him, and we were going to replace everything. He took it further, if I may clarify for completeness, and he then issued us with blank invoice books. Because remember, Chair, when the invoice is being captured on the computer, it refers to an invoice number. So the invoice number was a paper document which had to be replicated and put in the file for the auditors to see. But also the names were changed on the document itself.
But what you destroyed in terms of this instruction, what you ultimately destroyed was not just the paperwork, it's the computers as well?
That's correct.
Or about how many computers did you destroy?
There were about 3 that were being used specifically.
Yes. So
we replaced them.
And you say Bosasa was a big client of Blake's Travel?
We'd spend between 1.7 and 2.2 million rand per month with them.
So they knew exactly what you were going to do with the computers and why you...
No, we told them.
Yeah. So they knew why you wanted to destroy the computers, and they cooperated.
That's correct, Chair.
Thank you.
All right. Pursuant to this instruction from Gavin Watson, did you then meet with Brian Blake of Blake's Travel?
That is correct.
What did you tell him?
I told him that we were instructed to collect all the documents and to have them destroyed. He obliged and he gave it to us.
What did he give to you?
The documents and the computers.
Right. And after collecting the computers and documents, what did you and, I presume, Andries van Tonder do?
That's right. We drove to a hostel which we were busy developing at that stage, and there was a big hole there, and we threw them in there and asked someone to go and fetch us some petrol, a gentleman by the name of Reino Rueda, who was responsible for various gardening and maintenance and oversight over like a groundsman type person, and tasked him to go get us some petrol. He brought the petrol, and we poured over the items, lit it, and burnt everything, burnt all the evidence. We'd been instructed to do it.
Reino is spelled R-Y-N-O, is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. And the name of the hostel to which you've referred?
Leipzig's Vlei.
Leipzig's Vlei,
yes,
right?
It's directly opposite, parallel to the Bosasa offices in the same street.
Was that a property which belonged to Bosasa?
That is correct.
And what was the condition of the site?
Well, it was a construction site at the moment, at that stage.
And you say in your statement exactly that, it was being revamped and was a construction site.
Correct.
And did you dig a hole?
Yes, we used the back actor. There was actually a hole there. Gerrit van der Bank was the guy who drove the TLB.
What's
and
a TLB?
Front-end loader, I don't know what. All I know is it's yellow metal. I've never really...
Anyway, there was a hole. What
Yeah.
did you do then? You threw the
everything
documents
in
and
there,
computer in the hole. You
poured
set it
petrol
alight.
over it.
Let's one at a time, please. There was a hole. You threw the computer and documents in the hole. You set it alight, as you said.
That is correct.
Was anything further done to conceal the operation?
It was covered up. Literally.
That is the cover-up.
It was covered up, Chair.
Sorry. And thereafter, in relation to the travel orders that subsequently occurred, what was the arrangement?
We've gone into that already in terms of the JJ Fenter account. And basically what happened was that account would be, any VIP travel would be booked under that account. That account then would be reconciled and given to Dr. Jurgen Smith at the end of the month, who was running Concilium Business Consultants, Chair. And he would then reimburse me through Concilium for the actual travel. So he would take all the travel documentation. Let us say maybe perhaps I booked my family or my children somewhere to go somewhere. He'd go through each and every invoice, have a look at it. If there was personal stuff, he would book it to me personally and deduct it from the amount, the total amount, and give me the balance that was used for the individuals.
Right, that was in relation to travel after the cover-up of the documents.
Correct.
What was done in relation to the records that were destroyed?
Could you just explain
Well, now
yourself?
we have a travel company with no records.
I think I explained it earlier that there was a certain computer that was used for Bosasa, or certain computers that were used for the Bosasa account. So it wasn't that they had no records. They had records, but they had just a total figure as an opening, which would be an opening balance when they start the next month.
Yes, then I don't understand the allegation in paragraph 30.5. Would you explain that, please, to the chair?
Yes, no, that wasn't to do with that is to do with the Bosasa records, not with regards to Blake's records.
Not with regard to?
Blake's records to do with Bosasa's records of travel. Let me clarify.
Yes, please. Will
Chair.
you tell what happened there?
So what happened is there was a certain employee that was instructed, because Great Plains would refer you to an amount. The auditors might very well come and say, can we pull that invoice, please? So what would happen is this lady was instructed by Gavin to rewrite every single travel invoice
In Bosasa.
in Bosasa, because unfortunately, Blake's Travel would use a carbonized invoice book. So they would write accommodation for MT at the Paxton Hotel on this date. This was his extras. That is their commission, 10%, and that's the total. Then that would be transferred onto a statement. So you had to now rewrite that invoice. You couldn't really scratch it out because there were 3 copies. So Martel Wills, sorry, I just want to correct that because I slipped out the name. This person would, sorry, I did not want to mention a name for fear of safety.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Okay. They do have the name of the person. The person would write out the invoice, but instead of now putting T, they would write the Agrizzi. And they would put it in my name, or they
Yeah.
would put it in someone else's name.
Yeah.
Then that invoice would be attached and be given back to Blake's Travel, their copy. The other copy would be retained in the accounts folder. Does that explain the question, Chair?
That was in relation to the period preceding the destruction of evidence.
That no, it wasn't preceding the destruction of evidence. It was post the destruction.
No. I understand that the writing up afresh of information was post the destruction.
Correct.
But I want you to confirm whether the information that was being written up now related to what had happened prior to the destruction.
Correct, Chair.
Okay, all right.
So just in summary then, after revelations in the media concerning the activities of Bosasa in relation to favors concerning travel and accommodation, Blake's records were destroyed and Bosasa's records were recreated.
That is correct, Chair.
Now, you do say that what had prompted or this, or at least in part, was that a journalist, it appeared, had copies of documents from Blake's travel, which showed that Bosasa used Blake travel to facilitate travel arrangements of, amongst others, government officials. Now, you destroyed the records, Blake's records relating to travel arrangements made at the request of Bosasa.
Correct.
For a certain period. Now, what was the plan as to how the information that this journalist seemed to have was going to be dealt with? Was it that it was going to be suggested that it was not authentic
Correct.
information?
That is correct, Chair.
Okay. On the basis that anybody who went to Blake's travel records would find something different.
Correct, Chair.
Thank you.
It would be a conspiracy theory from Stellenbosch.
But of course, the destruction of the evidence was a true conspiracy.
Correct.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, you're right.
I must point out, Chair, and to you, Mr. Agrizzi, that in paragraph 30.1, you refer to Annexure M as the media release containing information from Blake's. The portion, and it appears to be a portion of Annexure M, which we've just dealt with in your evidence, doesn't appear to refer to Blake travel. I stand to be corrected. But it does appear that that media report attached is not complete, but we will check it.
Okay, all right.
If I can just add there,
Yes.
Recall, Chair, there was actually pictures of photostated invoices, handwritten ones, that appeared with that. So there should be more there. I think that was the only annexure I had at this stage, but I'm sure if we ask the paper concerned, they'll provide it to us.
Yes, in fact, if we go back to Annexure M, if we go back to page 351,
No, it doesn't show it.
where we see the article, and turn to page 354,
Yeah,
at the bottom of the page, it reads, pictures from a confidential surveillance report of a senior department of, and then the document says no more, but it appears that there is further content to this annexure?
Correct.
Well, we'll check that and
Yes.
revert if necessary.
Correct. Thank you, Chair.
In paragraph 30.6, then, you say what the position was after the destruction of the Blake's travel documents and the arrangement that was made in relation to travel for very important clients of Bosasa. Correct.
Correct.
They were fictitiously recorded in the books of Blake's travel, is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
Then in paragraph 30.7, you say that Mr. Blake was subpoenaed to testify in a matter instituted by the SIU in the Pretoria High Court. Very briefly, what was that matter?
The SIU wanted information, records, documentation, and hard drives in terms of any dealings with the Bosasa group of companies. That is what it was about.
And what happened in relation to that subpoena?
Well, the subpoena was...
To your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I know because I was integrally involved, Chair. The subpoena was postponed and postponed. There were numerous arguments and excuses given, and basically ended up with a meeting that took place at Brian Blake's attorney's office one morning with Brian Biebuck present, myself present, in Randfontein, where we tried to intimate to their attorney that he must start to postpone and play for time with the SIU. His attorney wasn't happy because he said, you know, you people are actually trying to, and he told Brian Biebuck, he actually said to him, he says, you're playing with fire because you're trying to interfere with witnesses. So,
Were you, to your knowledge, successful in your endeavor to prevent the subpoena being carried out?
no, I don't think, I don't know at all, no.
Do you know whether Blake ever testified in court?
I'm not aware.
Then in paragraph 31, you go on to deal with information received by Gavin Watson arising out of the SIU investigation. Would you tell the Chair what happened in respect of the SIU investigation and the records of Bosasa?
Chair,
Before you deal with that question, Mr. Agrizzi, I'm looking for the paragraph here, and I don't see it immediately. Oh, yeah, I think it's paragraph 30.7 that Mr. Pretorius referred to a few minutes ago. Say, Blake was subpoenaed to testify in a matter instituted by the SIU in the Pretoria High Court. Gavin Watson instructed Biebuck to attend to a meeting with Blake and his attorney to ensure that Blake would not implicate Bosasa in his evidence. You might not be able to answer this, but if you can, please do. Do you know, the idea that an attorney must go and have a meeting with somebody to ensure that that person doesn't implicate somebody else? It seems strange. It's different if he's going there to listen and note what his evidence is. What was your understanding of what Mr. Biebuck's role was really going to be there? Was it just to listen to what was being said, or was it much more than that?
no, the role that was played, and you must remember, Chair, as I mentioned right in the beginning of my testimony, if an instruction was given to you and you did not follow it out, there was a dustbin with your name on it.
Yes, but this was Wasn't this an independent attorney?
Doesn't matter. Then the instruction would be, don't use him anymore. And who was his biggest client? Was us. So he would do whatever he had to do.
So are you saying to me that from what you knew in terms of his role and the interactions between himself, that is now the attorney, and yourselves and Mr. Gavin Watson with him, he knew that his role was to prevent Mr. Blake telling the truth?
Was to stymie the investigation. That was his role. He went out there to stymie the investigation. And there's a second occurrence with different people as well, Chair. So it's not just one isolated occurrence. But the fact is, and this is what I tried to get across right in the beginning, that even, I can't say a judge, I don't want to take that chance, but even the dear Pope would probably be corrupted if they had to deal with the situation.
Well, what you are saying is quite serious.
Very.
Particularly in respect of an attorney.
Correct.
So I just want you to make sure that you are quite clear that what you are saying is really true.
Chair,
Yes.
I wouldn't lie.
Yes.
I didn't spend fortunes
Yes.
to get to this point,
Yes, yes.
and my time and my effort to lie to you. I will come and tell you the
Yes.
truth.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is, he had to stymie the appearance
Yes.
of both Mr. Brown Blake
Yes.
and also of the taverners as well,
Yes.
which he did very successfully. He stymied it for, I think, close to 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
Well, let's just understand your evidence in that respect. You understand, as we said in opening before you gave evidence, Mr. Agrizzi,
Yes.
that we are not presenting a case to the chair. We're presenting ongoing investigations.
Correct.
They will be tested in due course
Yes.
by further investigations, and they will obviously be tested in due course by cross-examination of you
Correct.
and the submission to the chair of different versions. Only
Correct.
thereafter will the chair make up his mind, and only thereafter will we make any submissions in regard to the truth or otherwise and the reliability of your evidence.
I'm well aware of that, Chair.
So we're in an investigation process at the moment. Let me just say in relation to this, if the attorney concerned was briefed by Bosasa to protect Bosasa's interest, there may have been a legitimate interest in finding out whether Blake's Travel, a client of Bosasa, had any information that might implicate or prejudice Bosasa.
I wouldn't know what the legal ramifications are. I will just put it to the chair as it happened. And this is what happened, and that's what I'm putting to the chair. In terms of the legal ramifications of that, it really doesn't worry me in the sense that I'd rather just tell you the truth. Hopefully that we can prove through this all that the justice system in South Africa actually works.
Well, it may be that your understanding of the meeting is a gloss that you put on the contents of the meeting, which is your own perspective, and that the facts of the meeting were really Mr. Bibak making legitimate inquiries of the attorney of Blake's Travel.
The attorney was quite annoyed, Chair.
Which attorney?
Mr. Blake's attorney. So I would leave it up to the investigators, as was suggested by Advocate Pretorius, that the investigators do the investigation and they make their own conclusion rather.
Thank you.
Let's go on then In paragraph 31.1, you say that Gavin Watson received information in respect of the progress of the SIU's investigation.
That's
We
correct.
will refer in more detail later in your evidence to the receipt of information by Bosasa and its representatives concerning the SIU investigation. But I want to ask you, please, about the contents of paragraph 31.1, where you say that an instruction was given to an IT specialist. Let's start. Who gave the instruction referred to here?
Every single instruction came from Gavin Watson.
And the IT specialist referred to, was that an employee of the Bosasa Group or an external specialist?
It was an internal person in the company that was an IT, worked in IT.
And were you present when the instruction was given?
Yes, I was.
What was the instruction?
Instruction was to fake a crash, server crash, and destroy files.
Which files?
Any files that could implicate the company before the investigators could gather evidence.
Right. At this stage, had the SIU investigators searched the premises of Bosasa?
No.
Before the instruction was carried out, was any process undertaken?
There was a disaster log created on the server, and I'd circulated a memo in this regard, but unfortunately I could not find the memo, so I have what is known as the disaster log reflected in Annexure N.
I'm referring to the information which you say was ultimately destroyed.
Yes.
Apart from the destruction, was the information preserved in another form?
Yes.
How?
It was preserved before the destruction of evidence. I requested that it be preserved on 2 hard drives, or 3 hard drives, that I've made available to the Commission and made available to the Hawks.
All right. The document at page 356, what is that document?
Sorry, I just need to get to it. Annexure N refers to a data log, which is called the disaster data log for the 8th of November 2007.
Right, this is the cover page of a document.
That's correct.
The document at page 357, is that part of this disaster log?
That is correct.
Where do we find the scope of disaster and its classification referred to in the contents list on page 356?
Well, sorry, are you asking me where do we find the extent of the data that was damaged or lost?
No, sorry, let me be clear.
Yes.
On page 356, there's a document headed Bosasa IT Disaster Log 8 November 2007.
Correct.
Under the head Contents,
That's right.
there is a list, presumably, of those contents. 1, background. 2, scope of disaster. 3, disaster classification. 4, recovery strategy.
Correct.
Can you help us, please, because I'm not an expert, and I presume the chair is also not an expert. Where do we find in this document, or the document on the following page, the scope of the disaster classification, and the recovery strategy?
Chair, I cannot answer this. I'm definitely probably less versed in computers than you are.
In any event, on page 357, there is paragraph which reads, "Dear Johan, it is with regret that I have to inform you that we cannot perform a data recovery on your RAID 5 set due to 2 hard drives having failed simultaneously. According to our data recovery specialists, it is impossible to rebuild the RAID set if 2 drives fail." And then there's some more technical language which follows, but perhaps an expert can explain that to the Commission or whoever might be interested in the future.
Correct. Sorry, I cannot help the Chair.
Yes, no, that's fine.
In paragraph 31.2, you refer to a telephone call that you received from Gavin Watson, as you say, on a Sunday afternoon.
I was at a hotel. I was actually entertaining guests, Americans that had been working with us on the PPP project, and I received a call. It was on a Sunday, it was a Sunday afternoon, and I was told that the offices were going to be raided the next Monday. I was only supposed to come back on the Tuesday because these were Americans and they were on a game safari drive and that type of thing. I had to leave them. I was instructed to come back. I had to leave them there, arrange transfer for them back, and drive back to the office.
What did Mr. Watson tell you?
He had told me that he had got information from Mr. Siopela that the Hawks were going to be or someone was going to be raiding the office. I cannot remember if it was the Hawks or the Scorpions, or I don't know who it was, but we were told to meet him at the office, so I met him at the office.
Right. Did Mr. Watson tell you whether Mr. Siopela told him in turn when this raid, as you describe it, would take place?
It was apparently Monday, the Monday.
Yes, the day following the telephone
Correct.
call from Watson to yourself.
Correct.
And did Mr. Siopela tell Mr. Watson anything else that Mr. Watson related to you?
He said they were looking for specific documents and specific transactions, and I was just told to be at the office.
Did you go to the office?
Yes, I did.
And when you arrived there, did you find Mr. Watson there?
As a matter, I found him in his office.
Who else was there?
Andries van Tonder was with him.
And did you receive any instructions?
Yes, the instructions were, they gave, at that stage, I can't even remember, but at that stage, Andries was ahead of me. We were instructed to go through all the offices to have a look at anything possibly incriminating evidence. The information that Gavin received from Senior Siopela was that they were looking for the sale of shares agreement in respect of Pezulu fencing, as well as agreement between Gavin Watson and MT for the payment of money in return for an undertaking from him that would ensure that Bosasa would be given preference in the awarding of tenders with correctional services.
Did such a document exist?
Yes, it did.
How do you know that?
Because I saw the document and I actually made a photostat of the document.
And do you have that photostat?
Unfortunately, I do not have that photostat.
So if I understand you correctly, you saw a document
Yes,
being an agreement between Gavin Watson and Mr. MT for the payment of money in return for an undertaking to favour Bosasa in relation to the awarding of tenders.
it was a 3-page document and it was very specific.
And did it say what you have said in paragraph 31.3?
It's exactly.
And were you instructed to look for any particular documents?
Yes, we were instructed to look for them.
Those documents to which you've just referred.
That is correct.
Right. Did you find those documents?
We found those documents.
What did you do in respect of those documents?
Well, in terms of, are you referring me back now to 31.3? Because you're asking me.
No,
We
I'm
found
dealing
them.
with 31.4. What did you found the documents,
Yeah,
and
we
then what
removed
did
the
you do with them?
documents. We removed the documents, Chair.
when you
Yes,
say...
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius, before you proceed, just to go back to 31.3.
Yes, Chair.
You say you found a document that appeared to be an agreement between Mr. Gavin Watson and Mr. MT about that Mr. MT would ensure that Bosasa was favored in terms of contracts from correctional services, and he would be paid by Mr. Gavin Watson. That's
correct.
what you say.
That's correct, Chair.
And you said you made a photocopy of that agreement. Did I understand you correctly?
That's correct, Chair.
But you proceeded and said you don't have it.
I don't.
Did it get lost in the meantime, or?
Chair, they were all packed together and they were stored.
But you saw it, you had it for some time.
Yes, Chair.
So you had had a chance to read it properly.
Correct, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Do you
And
remember?
it was signed by both?
It was not signed. It was only signed by Gavin Watson.
Yeah,
I can't recall if it was signed by MT. I know that it was signed by Tony Perry as a witness.
okay, all right.
Well,
I can't recall seeing MT. I'd be lying if I told you I had seen it. I can't recall it.
Okay.
it seems improbable, if not very strange, that such an arrangement would be recorded in writing and signed.
It was
Do
done.
you have any comment?
It was done. It was recorded in writing.
And what is also a matter of some concern in relation to your evidence, Mr. Agrizzi, is
Yes.
that yesterday and in previous days you've testified not once, but I think more than once, that it was Gavin Watson's affirmed practice never to reduce things to writing and never to sign anything. If this was an exception, it's a very unusual exception.
I think that Mr. Richmond MT perhaps knew Gavin better than all of us. And he insisted that there be a signature.
But Mr. MT too would know that this was a wrong agreement. What they were agreeing to do was wrong, and he probably wouldn't like there to be a written record of what he was party to.
Chair, you will see later on that the agreement was actually found much later on, and it was actually it was then shown not only to myself but to somebody else as well, and then handed back to Mr. Watson.
But you say you are not sure about Mr. MT's signature on the document, but you are sure about Mr. Gavin Watson's signature.
Chair, I can guarantee you that the signatures that were on the document were very noticeable signatures. There were Gavin Watson, Tony Perry, and there was another signatures. I don't know if it was Richmond MT's signature. I can't recall. I've seen his signature on one other document, and that was post the fact when we got him to sign the acknowledgement of debt. And that's why I can't comment. I cannot say that was his signature.
Okay.
His name was there, but
Okay.
whether it was a signature or not, I cannot say.
Thank you.
Perhaps that evidence, Mr. Agrizzi, will be tested in due course under cross-examination, but for the present, it seems that even on your own evidence, Gavin Watson would not sign documents because, as you say, he did not want to be held accountable for any evidence that appeared in writing.
I'm sure as my colleagues start presenting, you will see that he did maybe sign one or two documents that were important.
But
That we
if
do
that
have
was his
signature.
practice,
I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius, he hasn't finished. Mr. Agrizzi
So-
hasn't finished
so
saying what he
there
wanted
are-
to say.
There are the odd occasion when he would slip up and he would sign something. And if you recall, this started off in 2003, 2004. At that stage, it was very bullish in the company, and I can tell you what I saw, and I saw the signature. Other people will testify as well. And then, yes, are we welcoming, or I'm welcoming, the cross-questioning.
Thank you.
Just to put the perhaps obvious follow-up question, if Mr. Watson signed only when he slipped up or only on the odd occasion, in other words, in the exceptional circumstance,
Yes,
it's rather remarkable that the recording of an unlawful transaction would be such an exceptional circumstance.
it was a major deal for the company. I think, Chair, I can only attest to what I saw.
Yes, obviously you can understand why Mr. Pretorius is asking you the questions that he's asking you, and I'm asking you the questions I'm asking you, simply because the question would be, what would be the value of that agreement to both Mr. MT and Mr. Watson? They couldn't go to court and use it if they didn't comply with their obligations.
Chair, I know that and you know that. It seems to me that they didn't know that. It's as good as having the side agreements in terms of fronting and giving somebody shares. It's the same thing. It's illegal. You can't do it.
Thank you.
All right. You say then that in relation to these documents that you were asked to look for and
Yes.
remove, that you in fact removed the documents.
Yes, we did.
What do you mean by remove the documents? Is that the putting in storage that you refer to now?
What happened was we put them into storage. We just packed them into the boot of my car because he wanted them out of there. And we took them and we stored them on a farm.
And then, did something later happen in relation to these documents?
Yes.
What was that?
There were newspaper reports coming out that were rehashing the whole SIU investigation. Gavin Watson approached not me, but Andries van Tonder and myself only at a later stage to say to us, we need to go destroy the documents. So Andries, what I'm trying to say is Andries came to me and said, we have to go destroy documents. I then phoned Gavin up and checked with him and said, oh, you're right. He said, I want you to go destroy documents.
Did you do that?
He asked us to look specifically for the document. He was concerned because he hadn't seen the document yet that he had signed between himself and MT.
That's the document you refer to in your evidence now.
31.6. That was the only document that we had to hold back for him. He wanted that document.
So you didn't destroy that document. What did you do with it?
No. As I said to you earlier, I had made a copy of it. So the copy that I made was not then my correction. I got a bit confused. It was 31.7. Then what happened there was we took the document to him, and he was very relieved, visibly relieved, because he thought that would be the end of his life. He then he shredded it by hand. He put it in a Ziploc bag, you know, the sandwich bags that you get, and he put lots of water with it and just kept making like a papier mâché and then flushed it down the toilet, and he was very relieved.
We're going to now get onto matters relevant to the SIU report, and you introduced the topic at paragraph 32 of your affidavit on page 6 of Exhibit S1.
Correct.
Before Mr. Pretorius asks you questions on that, did the raid happen?
Chair, no, nothing happened.
It did not happen.
No.
Okay, thank you.
The only thing was that we had reached an agreement with the SIU that they could come and copy the servers, but there was no raid.
Well, not that nothing happened, something did happen,
Yes.
but it couldn't be described in your mind as a raid.
Not at all. There was no blue lights and flashy cars like you see on TV when the Scorpions used to go and arrest and raid. There was nothing like that.
We will refer in due course to detailed evidence in regard to what happened.
Okay.
On 6 January 2009, I'm not sure it's in dispute, the Department of Correctional Services apparently awarded Bosasa Operations Pty Limited a new catering contract.
That is correct.
And the number of that contract, which becomes relevant later, apparently HK 14/2008.
That is correct.
For what period was this contract?
This was a 3-year contract.
And the documentation used for the prior catering contract tender, was that same documentation again used for the second catering contract awarded to Bosasa?
Well, in terms of the specifications, correct.
Now, in paragraph 32.2, you refer to a meeting. Let's tell the chair about that meeting, please. Between whom was this meeting?
Well, in terms of that period of time, a meeting was arranged between the representatives of the SIU. So we had heard all these rumors that they were investigating Bosasa and all that. So the suggestion was made, have a meeting with them and find out. So we had a meeting with the SIU.
Who's we?
Myself, Andries van Tonder, Gavin Watson wasn't there. He wouldn't attend that. He was rather veer away from that. Frans Foster was there. Brian Biebuck was there. And if I remember correctly, Advocate Lawrence Hodes was there. And basically, we had the meeting with SIU. There was Suede Jacobs, I think it was there. Clint Ullman was there. And there were various other people from the SIU. Those were the people that were
Ullerman.
there. Sorry?
Can you spell that?
Ullerman.
Ullerman.
It's like a school test. O-E-L-L-E-R-M-A-N.
Well, I'm sure that name appears in documents that we
Yes,
will
it
refer
does.
to in due course. But this meeting, did it take place subsequent to another communication between
Yes, and that was the
Bosasa on the one hand and the SIU on the other?
That is correct.
What was that
So
communication?
the meeting, the other meeting was, no, sorry, we cannot have the servers checked now because we're busy with month end and year end, so we tried to postpone it. So it was a letter of postponement.
You refer in paragraph 32.2, in the second sentence, to a communication
Yes.
that preceded the meeting. What was
Correct.
that communication?
That communication was to say that we have heard via the press that we are being investigated and would like to have information regarding that so that we can tender our assistance going forward.
And the meeting then took place. What was the outcome of that meeting?
Well, a date was arranged for the investigation and for the mirroring of laptops and that type of thing.
So, do I understand you correctly? It was agreed with the SIU precisely when they would come to image the hard drives and laptops at Bosasa.
That is correct, Chair.
The date that was arranged in that meeting with the SIU, did it remain or was it changed?
It was changed,
Why?
Chair. Well, it was changed because it was postponed on instruction because we needed to give enough time to the IT specialist to actually remove potentially damaging information.
Who instructed the postponement?
Well, the postponement was instructed by myself, and obviously I was instructed by Gavin Watson.
Right. And did representatives of the SIU eventually make mirror images of hard drives and laptops?
Yes.
In paragraph 32.5, you talk about interaction between two Bosasa servers.
Correct.
Please explain to the Chair what you're saying there.
So for redundancy purposes, you'd have two servers. The one being a Bosasa main server, the other one was linked to another server. That's how I understand. I'm not an IT specialist. But when something is done on the one, you can actually monitor it on the other one. So it's a mirror image. You have an arranged with a chap by the name of William Brandon and Max Leeson. Those two youngsters had actually studied with one of the nephews, and they were very trusted. So Gavin personally arranged with them, as he had a relationship with them, to monitor what the representatives of the SIU, I think it was Mr. Jacques Malan, that was to check up on what he was looking at and what he was doing.
Yes, we'll hear of Mr. Malan later, but
yes,
to simplify things, whilst Mr. Malan or other representatives of the SIU were copying the data on the server, that activity was being monitored on a connected server by the two gentlemen referred to in your affidavit.
correct, yes.
Were the two gentlemen you refer to entrusted with any other task?
I can't, yes, they had to delete potentially harmful information that was on the server. I think we actually mention it here. To ensure that they removed information which might damage or implicate Bosasa prior to the mirror image being made.
All right, let's deal with paragraph 33.1 then. Did you ever see a copy of the SIU report?
Yes.
When did you see it?
Sorry?
When did you see it?
I was sent a copy by Bibak.
Right. When?
I was actually in Paris at the time with Andries van Tonder, Gavin, and we were on a holiday trip.
Can you recall more or less when you saw it?
It was in 2009. I cannot remember. Well, let's think. It was summer in Paris.
And in paragraph 33, you list some of the contents of the report
Yes.
containing information that you say you were indeed previously aware of. And then you list a number of items in paragraph 33. Just please read those out for the
Yes.
Chair.
I will read them out. Furniture bought for Gillingham MT, architectural fees, certain holiday trips paid for, certain cash deposits, certain vehicles purchased, certain sponsorships for children's varsity fees and or tuition, provision of forex for travel allowance, certain repairs and maintenance on houses, construction of houses, purchasing of imported kitchens, a retirement village concession for Gillingham's father, numerous other favors such as rugby season tickets, computers, printers, and even a matric dance dress for me in Gillingham. And then trading in of certain vehicles where the person could not obtain a lucrative settlement. These were bought by individuals and subsidized by Bosasa.
Now, you have given evidence about some of these issues in this list that you saw
Yes,
in the report.
correct.
Did you yourself give any evidence or information to SIU investigators?
I did not.
So the information that they gleaned and placed in their report must have come from sources other than yourself.
Correct.
Chair, because the SIU report then may well constitute, particularly on further evidence, corroborating evidence, it's our intention to go through it. That will take some time. But before we go there, perhaps we can just deal with 33.2 and 33.3, and then I'm going to take Mr. Watson, I'm sorry, Chair, it's late, Mr. Agrizzi through the contents of the report.
Okay.
Did you discuss the content of this report with Mr. Watson?
Yeah, we did.
What was his attitude at the time?
No, his attitude was he blamed everybody else. He blamed Mark Taverner, he blamed Danny Mansell, he blamed Tony Perry for not taking precautionary measures.
And did he give you any assurance?
He told me everything's under control.
Did he give you any advice?
He said I had to stick to him. Told us we had to stick to him, otherwise the future is very bleak.
Right. Subsequent to the release of the report, were any subpoenas issued,
Yes.
amongst others, to Mark and Sharon Taverner?
That is correct.
And did you receive any instruction in relation to those subpoenas?
I was to meet them and to take steps to delay their appearance as much as possible.
Do you have anything further to add? And again, please.
I was to attend every single meeting with them and Brian Biebuck and make sure that Brian Biebuck was the attorney on record for them. They weren't allowed to use anybody but whoever Brian Biebuck agreed to if he didn't do it himself. And I had to make sure that Bosasa was not compromised in all of this. And I had to insist that I saw the statements before they were submitted. I did this, and eventually they appeared in compliance to the subpoenas after about, if I'm not mistaken, it was about 18 months.
A period of 18 months, you say, elapsed,
If I'm not mistaken, I might be mistaken.
but a long period from
Very
the issue
long.
of the subpoena to the execution of the subpoena.
Correct.
But eventually you say the subpoenas were complied with.
Correct.
The SIU report appears at page 279 of bundle S1.
I just want to clarify, you asked me the
Yes.
question if they complied with the subpoena, Chair. If they complied with the subpoena.
Yes,
They complied in terms of appearance,
yes.
but what was put into the subpoena was not necessarily the whole truth. So you're
What
aware.
was put in response to, what they said in response to the
The
subpoena?
questions.
In
Correct.
response to the questions?
Okay.
Yes, okay.
And in terms of your instructions, you ensured that this occurred.
Yes. Well, not me directly, but yes.
Chair, you're aware that the document at page 279 is incomplete. The complete, and by complete I mean basic report as opposed to the report plus all annexures, is later on in annexure S2, or exhibit S2. But because our preparations took place and my notes on this document were put on this document in preparation for the evidence before the fuller one was put in the bundles, would you bear with me, please, if we go through the document at page 279 and then, when necessary, go to the document, the full document, for the subsequent pages?
That's
Otherwise,
fine.
I have to transfer all my notes.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair. This report is preceded by an executive summary which appears on page 279. And in paragraph 1 of the executive summary, it appears that the SIU's intervention was authorized by a presidential proclamation,
That's correct.
which was gazetted on 28 November 2007.
That is correct.
Reference is made to the surfacing in 2006 of various allegations in the media relating to the allegedly irregular awarding of contracts by the Department of Correctional Services to Bosasa Operations Pty Limited and its affiliated companies.
That is correct,
That's
Chair.
what the executive summary says. So, as we will discover this SIU investigation deals only with contracts between the Department of Correctional Services on the one hand and Bosasa or Bosasa-related companies on the other.
Correct.
And it deals only with 4 contracts. What is referred to here as the kitchens contract, what we've referred to in your evidence as the catering contract.
Correct.
Or contracts. The second contract is the access control contract. Is that correct?
Correct.
The third is the televisions or CCTV contract.
That is correct.
And the fourth is the fencing contract.
That is correct.
So it's only those 4 contracts between those 2 parties or sets of parties that are dealt with in this report.
In this report, you're right.
We know, of course, that there are many other contracts tainted with the type of evidence that you've given. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The allegations that were investigated, which came from the Public Service Commission and the Office of the Auditor General, are listed in the middle of paragraph, or in the middle of page 279. One of the more serious allegations referred to, and those are the words in the executive summary, are firstly an irregular relationship existed between Bosasa or members of the Bosasa group of companies and 2 DCS, Department of Correctional Service officials, namely the former Commissioner of Correctional Services, Mr. LMT, Commissioner MT, and the DCS Chief Financial Officer, Mr. P. Gillingham. The second allegation is that Commissioner MT and Gillingham may have unduly received benefits as a result of the award of some of the contracts awarded by DCS to Bosasa and its affiliates. The third allegation is 2 tenders, namely the kitchens tender and the access control tender, were irregularly extended. And the fourth is Bosasa and its affiliates were responsible for drafting the bid specifications for these tenders. Now, in respect of all these issues, you have given detailed evidence.
Most definitely.
The same issues were the subject of the investigations by the SIU.
I do think mine is a bit more comprehensive, though.
Yes. Well, in some respects you're correct, and in others not.
Correct.
The SIU report contains other information, and some of the evidence you've given is not contained in the report.
Correct.
But the purpose, Chair, of leading this evidence and taking the witness through is, again, to see what in the report this witness knows from his own knowledge, and also to understand what evidence the SIU investigation produced. We have that evidence in a series of affidavits, and it will be impossible for this commission to call each and every witness, but those affidavits will be placed before you in their proper form and will be summarized and presented to you. But in short, the evidence that this witness has given and will give appears, at least to some extent, to be corroborated by the outcome of the investigations of the SIU, and the detail will follow.
Okay, thank you.
And so the executive summary continues, Mr. Agrizzi, to say, shortly after the publication of the proclamation, the SIU commenced with the investigation of the contracts awarded to Bosasa and its affiliates, namely the kitchens, access control, fencing, and television contracts.
That is correct.
In the executive summary, the findings in respect of the kitchens tender HK2 of 2004 are set out. Now, you've given evidence of what you refer to as a catering contract or catering contracts. Do you recall that?
Correct.
Is that evidence, in fact, the same, relating to the same tender as is referred to here, the kitchens tender?
It's identical.
Right. And you recognize that number, HK2 2004?
I do.
And is that one of the contracts about which you've testified?
That is one of them.
According to the SIU investigation, it was awarded to Bosasa on 20 July 2004.
That is correct.
Evidence that you have not given, and this may be given later, Chair, is referred to here in the SIU report. The summary, or the executive summary, reads, the evidence gathered by the SIU shows that there were clear deviations from the National Treasury Supply Chain Management, a guide for accounting officers, authorities, supply chain management guide for accounting officers, more particularly in that the end user departments were not included in the bid process. There was also no proper financial planning for this tender, in that there was no feasibility study nor needs analysis conducted. I don't need to ask you to comment on that, but will ask you to comment on the next paragraph, which reads, the evidence clearly shows that Gillingham, outside the course of his normal duties, played an integral role from the outset in the procurement process and was irregularly instrumental in developing the tender specifications. Now, in relation to that, do you know whether Mr. Gillingham played a role on the various bid committees or otherwise in the procurement process relevant to this contract?
Yes, he did.
Okay, so we know that you paid him money. We know why you say you paid him money, according to your evidence, of course, still to be tested. And we know that, according to the SIU investigation, as confirmed by you, the recipient of that money played an integral role in the procurement process.
That is correct.
And as described here, was irregularly instrumental in developing the tender specifications. You've given that evidence.
Yes.
And that appears to be confirmed now by the SIU investigation. Then, interestingly, the following is set out. During the course of a search and seizure operation conducted at Gillingham's residence, a document containing the bid evaluation criteria and guidelines for evaluating the kitchen's tender was found in the form of electronic data. You obviously can't confirm what the SIU found.
I cannot.
But you do know, and you have told the chair, that there was an exchange of information between yourself and Mr. Gillingham.
And Mr. Mansell, correct.
And Mr. Mansell. And you've also told the chair that this, well, I'm not sure that you have, but did this exchange of information take place over computer?
Yes.
Exchange between electronic devices?
Yes.
The report goes on to read Mr. J. Milan. Is that the Mr. Milan you've referred to?
That is the same gentleman, yes.
The SIU cyber forensic expert determined that this document originated from the computer of Mr. A. Agrizzi, Bosasa's Chief Executive Officer, Stroke Manager and Director. Leave aside the description of the post, but you've testified that documents were exchanged in relation to the bids between yourself and others and Mr. Gillingham.
Well, I think Mr. Milan's comments are incorrect. Number one is I was never ever the Chief Executive Officer.
All right.
I was an operations coordinator. And according to Mr. Milan, the document was saved on my computer on the 28th of June 2004. I can't say that I actually created that document. It says that the same day that the DCS commenced with the screening of the bids received in respect of the kitchen tender. So I just want to clarify because it
Well,
says
let's
that.
take it step by step because you've gone ahead.
Sure.
All right. Let's deal with the first sentence
Yes.
relevant to what we're discussing now. It reads, Mr. J. Milan, the
Correct.
SIU cyber forensic expert, determined that the particular document referred to originated from the computer of Mr. Agrizzi. What do you say about that?
If you read it in context, it says it originated. And this is where I'm having an issue. It says it originated from a computer. You're talking about Bosasa's chief executive officer. According to Milan, the document was last saved. I'm reading something totally different. Sorry, on what paragraph are you?
All right.
Here he is on the second big paragraph from the end of or bottom of page 280. And he is on line 3.
You see the fifth paragraph.
Yes.
It reads, Mr. J. Milan, the SIU cyber forensic expert,
Yes, just a second.
determined that the particular document that he's referring to originated from your computer. Now, let's just stop there.
Has he found the paragraph?
Have you found that?
No, I'm still looking for it. Sorry.
Okay, all right, okay.
I'm
Listen-
lost.
Are
Okay,
you
it's
on
been a
page
long
200?
day.
Are you
Okay.
on page
I am
200?
on page 280.
Okay, let me tell him, Mr. Pretorius, it's been a
can't
long
seem to
day.
find it.
Are you on page 280?
I am, sir.
Okay. You see, if you go to the bottom of the page,
Yes.
there is a paragraph that has 3 lines only. Can you see that?
Yes.
And then there is another paragraph above that.
That
It's a
starts
big
on the
paragraph
evidence of the whistleblower.
that starts with during the course of
Okay, yes, I've got
a
that.
search and seizure.
Correct.
Yes. Go to line 3 then.
Well, perhaps, Chair, if I may interrupt, I apologize. Perhaps we should give the witness an opportunity to read the whole paragraph.
Yes, I just want to get
Well, he
enough
must
context.
find it first.
Yeah, I found
Have
it
you
now.
found it now?
Chair, I found it.
Okay, all
Now,
right.
let me read it.
Okay, but is it necessary for him to read the whole of it?
Yes, I think
I
so.
think I need
Chair,
to put into
because
context
there's some
because
confusion.
Okay,
there's
thank
one
you.
section that says, Chair, that it was, he could not determine the date of the first creation. And that's where I'm getting confused. So if I could just read it in context.
Okay, no, I think Mr. Pretorius would like you to read the whole paragraph.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Take your time. We are over time, but perhaps we should finish this tranche.
Yeah, just this part, yeah. You start. Did you want him to read silently or aloud, Mr.
No,
Pretorius?
he can read it silently to acquaint himself
Oh,
with
okay,
the-
all right, okay.
every allegation in context. Perhaps I'm being unfair this late in the day by picking and choosing the sentences that I want to refer to.
Well, that's why I'm getting confused because we're hopping and it confuses me.
On the contrary, Mr. Agrizzi, I was going in sequence, but I don't want to argue with you about that. That's futile. Just read the paragraph, please.
Sure. I would like to ask the chair a question to explain to me. It says that determined.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Pretorius. If the witness has questions after reading it, I think we better adjourn. Let him have time to look at it properly, and then we can continue tomorrow. How is that, Mr. Agrizzi? That will be fine.
I don't mind.
Yeah,
It's actually
it's
just-
not going to make much difference. A few minutes.
We can't answer questions, unfortunately, because it's not our evidence, it's your evidence.
I
But I would
understand.
advise, you have legal representation,
Yes.
read it carefully, discuss it, and we will discuss it tomorrow.
I'm happy with that.
Oh, okay,
Thank you.
all right. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
So we adjourn at this stage, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair.
In the affidavit, we finished at what page or paragraph? Just need to note it. Where we... Mr. Pretorius, are you able to...
About to answer your question. We were on page 70.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, that's good enough.
At the end of paragraph 33.3.
Okay. Thank you. We are going to adjourn until tomorrow at 10 o'clock. We adjourn.